Usury, traditionally defined as lending money at excessively high interest rates, has a long and contentious history. In ancient societies, such as those of Greece, Rome, and medieval Europe, charging interest at all was often considered immoral or exploitative, especially when it preyed on the poor. Religious laws in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism placed strict limits or outright bans on usury, viewing it as contrary to social justice and community ethics. With the rise of trade and capitalism, however, interest came to be seen not as immoral, but as compensation for risk and the opportunity cost of lending. This shift laid the foundation for modern banking systems, where responsible lending and borrowing play vital roles in economic growth. Interest rates, the percentage charged on borrowed money, are at the heart of the distinction between fair lending and usury. A moderate interest rate allows lenders to earn a reasonable return while enabling borrowers to access funds for education, housing, or business investment. But when rates climb too high, the debt burden can quickly become unmanageable. Borrowers may end up paying many times the original loan amount, creating cycles of financial dependence and poverty. High interest rates not only affect individuals, but can ripple through the wider economy, reducing consumer spending and increasing financial inequality. Politically, the regulation of interest rates reflects a society's balance between free market ideals and moral responsibility. Governments often establish usury laws to cap rates on certain loans, especially for vulnerable borrowers, such as those seeking payday or emergency funds. When such laws fail or are too lenient, lenders may legally exploit desperation, trapping people in debt spirals. Conversely, overly strict limits can make credit scarcer, pushing borrowers toward illegal or informal lending markets. The challenge lies in maintaining fair access to credit while protecting human dignity and economic stability, an issue as old as usury itself.
You don't need a map to find the trap. Just look for the places where the grocery store left, the bank shut its doors, the jobs got thin, and somehow the neon "Cash Today" sign stayed lit. That's not a market filling a gap. That's a wound learning how to feed on itself.
From the Mississippi Delta tonight, where too many families live in what some call a credit desert. This is the friction point, and our subject is usury, how high-interest lending takes root, why it sticks, and what it costs in money, trust, and plain old breathing room. Joining me to pull back that curtain are Sam, our structural realist, who knows how systems fail in slow, boring ways. Aris, who follows the incentives and calls out the math underneath the slogans. Maya, who keeps our eyes on what these schemes do to real households. Luna, who sees old financial power wearing new clothes. And Cipher, who always asks who profits when the trap stays shut. What we're really looking at tonight isn't just bad lending. It's what happens when scarcity gets turned into a business model. And the question for this panel is whether that machine survives because it's useful, because it's ignored, or because too many people make money from the wreckage. Maya, start us off.
The plain truth is, this starts where people run out of good choices. If your car dies, your lights are about to get cut off, or your child needs medicine, a small loan can feel like a life raft. But then the fees stack up, the due date hits too fast, and what looked like help turns into a drain that keeps taking from the same people over and over.
This thing lasts because it fits the ground it's sitting on. In places with thin banking, weak transportation, shaky work, and local governments stretched to the bone, the lender isn't just selling money. He's selling speed, access, and the fact that nobody else is open when the crisis hits.
Let's strip off the moral fog for a second. High-cost lending shows up where risk is high, collateral is low, and collection is hard. Now, that doesn't make every loan decent, but if you cap the price without changing the risk, the product disappears, and people don't suddenly become richer. They just go somewhere darker.
That's the clean version, sure. But the dirtier version is that whole regions get written off, then mined. If mainstream finance abandons a place and predatory operators rush in, That's not some natural weather pattern. Somebody made money on the exit, and somebody's making money on the leftovers.
I'm sorry, but even calling it leftovers is too kind. This is an extraction rig. The app changes, the storefront changes, the branding gets softer, but the system is still built to hook a desperate person at the exact moment their bargaining power is zero.
Sam, build that out. When you say the system fits the ground, what's the part people miss?
They miss the boring stuff. Say you're living 30 miles from a full-service bank. Your hours got cut, and the transmission in your truck gives out on Tuesday. You're not waiting 3 days for an approval committee. You're taking the ugly deal in front of you because the other option is losing the job that keeps the roof over your head.
Right, and that matters. Convenience isn't some side issue. In these markets, speed is part of the product. You can hate the price, but if the legal product is the only one that can move at that speed, then any fix that ignores that is dead on arrival.
I don't ignore speed. I think that's exactly why the trap works. The product is built around a real emergency, but the terms are built around the lender's need for repeat business. That's the piece people feel in their bones, even if they can't name it.
And that's where your market gap line falls apart, Aris. A gap gets filled once. A trap gets designed to reset itself. If the business works best when the borrower can't get clear, then the failure isn't accidental. It's the model.
Hold on. There's a difference between saying repeat borrowing exists and saying every lender wants default. A grocer wants returning customers too. The question is whether the customer is coming back because the product solves a short-term need, or because regulation has created a clumsy market with no better ladder upward.
That grocer line is cute, but a grocer doesn't make his bread by hoping your pantry stays empty forever. Here, the rollover is the pantry, the fee is the meal, and the lobbyists make sure nobody shuts the kitchen.
Maya, give me the lived arc. How does a small loan turn into long-term entrapment?
It starts with a gap that's smaller than the damage that follows. Maybe it's $300 to fix a tire and keep a paycheck coming. Then payday lands. The full balance plus fees comes due. Rent's still there. Groceries still cost what they cost, and the household can't absorb the hit. So they renew, or take a second loan, or bounce to another lender. By month 3, the original emergency is old news, and the new emergency is the debt itself.
That's right. And once that starts, the household budget is no longer a budget. It's a scramble. Every bill gets triaged. You pay the one that screams the loudest and pray the others wait.
Cipher, when you look at that cycle, where do you think the real protection failed first?
At the point where whole counties became safe dumping grounds for bad products. You don't get a credit desert by accident. Banks merge, branches close, underwriting hardens, and then the same political class that talks about financial inclusion shrugs when the only thing left on the corner is legal loan sharking with a smiley logo.
That's too neat. Some of those exits happened because branch banking in low-density areas stopped making sense. You can rage at that, but rage doesn't cover fixed costs.
And there it is. Stopped making sense. For whom? That's always the line. It doesn't make sense for the spreadsheet, so the town gets abandoned. And then, somehow, it makes perfect sense when high-fee lenders step in to strip what's left.
Luna, I want clarity, not fire for its own sake. Are these lenders old power in new packaging, or something different?
Both. The old trick is still there. Find people with no room to breathe and sell them one more gulp of air. The new part is reach. Now it can happen through apps, payroll products, data scraping, and frictionless interfaces that make debt feel like a setting on your phone instead of a chain around your ankle.
Aris, can you answer Maya's core point without dodging it? If profit depends on people rolling over debt, isn't the product rotten at the core?
If profit depends mostly on rollovers, that's a serious red flag, I'll give you that. But you still have to ask why the borrower has no exit. Usually it's because income is unstable, savings are gone, and cheaper credit won't touch them. So the rot may be in the loan, yes, but it's also in the labor market, housing costs, and failed local banking.
Clarification round. Maya, pick a point you want sharpened.
Aris, when you say cheaper credit won't touch them, are you saying that justifies charging terms that all but guarantee repeat borrowing? Or are you saying the real fix has to happen upstream before the loan market changes?
I'm describing the second one mainly. Bad terms can still be bad. I'm saying if you only smash the visible lender and ignore the conditions underneath, the desperation doesn't vanish. It just hunts for another outlet.
That's fair as far as it goes. But then we have to say out loud that access by itself isn't a good word if the access leads straight into repeat extraction.
Sam, your turn.
Luna, when you talk about digital systems replacing the old storefront trap, do you mean this gets worse because it's easier to hide, or better because new tech could offer cheaper alternatives?
Worse first, maybe better later. Right now, the sleek interface is cover. It removes the shame, the pause, the face-to-face moment where somebody might think twice. But yes, in theory, digital tools could build better products too. The problem is, we've let the worst actors get there first.
Cipher, one question.
Sam, do you think this survives more because regulators are asleep, or because they know full well that these products are propping up a broken local economy they don't want to fix?
Both, but not in some grand movie plot way. Most of the time it's simpler and uglier. Officials know the product is nasty, but they also know that if they pull it overnight, they'll get hammered by the consequences from people who still need cash by Friday. So they kick the can and call it realism.
We're near the end of this segment. Maya, one last line to land the point.
The emergency is real, but that doesn't make the trap honest. If a product works best when the borrower stays weak, then we should stop calling that service and start calling it what it is.
The cases are on the table, and none of them are comforting. Welcome back. What we've got here is a fight over whether usury in places like the Delta is mainly a symptom of deeper collapse, or a business that learned how to turn collapse into dependable revenue. And if the theme tonight is the interest trap, then the picture coming into focus is something like a clockwork parasite, built from fees, fear, and shortages, feeding in steady little bites while the host is told it's just surviving. This is the friction point. Aris, answer this clean. If a lender makes more money when the borrower can't get free, why shouldn't the public see that business as predatory on its face?
Because motive isn't proved by a bad outcome alone. Some borrowers do use short-term credit and get out. The real question is, what share of the business depends on repeat distress?
But that's the whole point. If the strong money comes from the people who can't get out, then your distinction is paper thin.
No, your framing is thin. You're taking the worst cases and pretending they define the whole category.
I'm looking at the model. Fees, rollover pressure, due dates misaligned with unstable income. That's not a side effect.
She's got you there. You can dress it up in market language, but if the machine needs churn from the same broke households, it's not selling rescue, it's renting panic.
And what do you replace it with by Monday morning, Sam? Moral disgust doesn't repair a transmission.
Neither does a loan that eats next week's grocery money.
This is the part I can't take seriously. Every time this comes up, somebody says, "Fine, but what's the alternative by Monday?" As if the existence of an emergency gives permanent moral cover to a rotten product.
No, it forces adults to think in trade-offs.
Trade-offs for whom? The borrower gets the risk, the fee, the shame, and the loop. The lender gets the yield.
And the regulators get plausible deniability. That's the sweet spot. Leave just enough legality around it so everybody can pretend it's ugly but necessary.
Cipher, stop hovering above it. Who exactly are you accusing?
State houses that carve loopholes. Companies that rebrand around caps. Banks that won't touch these towns but will finance the ecosystem from a safer distance. Pick a layer.
Careful. Some of that's real, some of that's you connecting push pins with red string.
As I was saying, before the eye roll, follow the structure. If one door gets shut and the same business pops back up through fees, installment wrappers, or earned wage products that still drain the same people, that's not random adaptation. That's a protected revenue stream.
Or it's a market trying to survive regulation written by people who don't understand credit risk.
No, that's too generous, Aris. A lot of these redesigns aren't about serving people better. They're about staying 1 inch on the legal side while the household still bleeds out in slow motion.
Sam, is this mostly weak enforcement? Or is the system quietly relying on these lenders to absorb shocks that wages and public policy won't?
The second one. That's the ugly truth. In a lot of places, high-cost credit is acting like a private emergency welfare system. Nobody wants to admit it exists because admitting it would mean confessing that wages are too thin, savings are gone, and public support is full of holes.
Yes, and that's why the human cost matters so much. People aren't just paying fees. They're losing sleep, skipping medicine, fighting at home, juggling shame with fear. The debt colonizes the rest of life.
And then we call that consumer choice. It's obscene.
I agree that phrase gets abused. But don't jump from that to pretending every cap, every ban, every crackdown works. Some of them just shove borrowers toward bounced checks, utility shutoffs, pawn, or illegal lenders.
Then build a real off-ramp. Small dollar public lending, postal banking, employer-linked emergency funds with guardrails, credit union partnerships. You act like the only options are parasite or void.
Most of those ideas sound nice in a conference room. Then fraud rises, defaults climb, and the program gets gutted.
That's lazy. A badly built tool can fail. That doesn't mean you keep the sledgehammer on people's hands because the wrench needs testing.
Here's where Maya's right. You don't need a perfect replacement on day one to admit the current setup is crooked. But here's where she runs into the wall. Any replacement still has to survive budget fights, bad administration, and people using it for problems bigger than it can solve.
Fine. Then stop pretending the wall is natural. It's political. Somebody decides rural banking can die. Somebody decides transportation can stay bad. Somebody decides emergency cash should come with a trap door.
You're spraying blame in every direction because it feels good. The hard part is pricing risk where the risk is real.
No, the hard part is you treating desperate people like weather data.
Luna, that's cheap.
No, it's true.
Maya, what's the first measurable sign that a borrower has stopped using credit and started being used by it?
When the loan no longer solves an outside problem and becomes the center of the household calendar. When paydays are organized around keeping the lender calm instead of keeping the family steady, the trap has closed.
And the parasite starts ticking. That's why the clockwork image fits. Every fee is a gear. Every rollover is another turn. Nobody needs one huge act of violence when the machine can do tiny ones on schedule.
That's a strong picture, but let's keep the feet on the floor. The reason it works is because the borrower has no cushion. No savings, no family margin, no nearby bank, no cheap transit, no extra shift to pick up. The machine bites because the body is already worn down.
Sure, but bodies don't wear down in a vacuum. Regions get managed into dependence.
Sometimes they're neglected into it. Not every failure is a mastermind.
Neglect that reliably pays somebody starts looking a lot like design.
Luna, do digital alternatives break the trap or just hide it better?
Right now, mostly hide it. A clean screen and a faster tap don't change the old math. They just make the trap frictionless. And if repayment gets piped straight through payroll or an account before rent and groceries breathe, that's not innovation. That's automation of desperation.
Unless the lower operating cost really does bring the price down.
Does it?
Yes, sometimes.
Show me where, at meaningful scale, in the hardest hit places.
Fair question. Not enough, yet.
That's an important admission. So if the market hasn't fixed it, and the state barely touches it, who moves first?
Local institutions with trust. Credit unions, churches with real financial counseling, non-profit lenders, employers who stop pretending every worker can absorb a $400 shock. And yes, states have to close loopholes at the same time.
Add one more thing. Simpler products. People in a crunch do not need fancy terms. They need plain costs, clear deadlines, and some room to miss once without getting skinned.
I'm with that. Transparency matters. But if you force mercy into the contract without funding the risk, someone eats the loss.
Maybe the whole point of public policy is that society should eat some of that loss before one family gets eaten by all of it.
There it is. Socialize the downside.
In a healthy society, yes. We already socialize failure all the time when it's convenient for people with nicer shoes.
And privatize the pain in the Delta.
Sam, does reform fail because it's weak, or because the business can always mutate faster than the rules?
Mostly the second. You ban one shape, it comes back wearing a fake mustache. That's because the demand is permanent as long as instability is permanent. You want a real win? You don't just police the storefront. You rebuild the ground under it.
Thank you. That's the first thing tonight you've said that sounds like the future.
Well now, don't get carried away.
Luna, one sentence. Moral failure or policy failure?
Policy failure that became a moral disgrace the minute we got used to it.
Aris, one sentence response.
Moral outrage is cheap if it won't finance a better option.
We're almost out of room in this segment. Maya, Aris, one last sentence each. Maya first.
If the only fast money available is the kind that feeds on repeat desperation, then the system isn't serving poor communities. It's harvesting them.
If you want to kill a bad product, build a better one that can survive the real world, not just a hearing room.
That was the nerve of it. And we'll leave the friction point there. Let's take the temperature down a notch. Under all that clash sits a harder question about what kind of risk a society leaves to families alone, and what kind it decides to carry together. Maya, Aris, beneath the fight over rates and rules, are you really arguing about facts, or about what we owe people when the ground gives way under them?
Both, but the values come first. I don't think a family in a cash emergency should be treated like a profit center just because they're out of options.
And I don't think saying that solves the engineering problem. We may agree on the human stakes and still disagree on whether a softer product can survive high default risk without constant subsidy.
I'm opening the floor. Is there a bridge here, or are these two standing on different banks for good?
There's a bridge, but it's ugly and expensive. You tighten the worst practices, build a narrow lane for emergency credit that doesn't spiral, and accept that somebody, public, private, charitable, is going to have to carry part of the risk.
I'd add sunlight. Real disclosure, ownership trails, political donations, affiliate deals, the whole plumbing diagram. A lot of rotten systems live because nobody sees the full machine at once.
And I'd add design with teeth. Don't just hand people cleaner debt. Build tools that help them avoid the cliff in the first place. Faster payroll options, community funds, basic banking access on a phone, without extraction hidden in the code.
Cipher, you've watched this from the edge of the fight. Give me the wider picture. What does this argument tell us about the problem itself?
It tells us the trap isn't one storefront or one bad actor. It's a chain. Weak wages, bank retreat, patchy rules, political convenience, and products built to live off instability. Break one gear and the others keep turning unless you go after the whole clock.
Before we wrap, Sam, one final takeaway for the listeners?
If you want fewer predators, don't just curse the wolves. Stop leaving so many people alone in the dark without a lock on the door.
Cipher, for a man who trusts no one, you and Sam spent an awful lot of time agreeing tonight. That's gotta feel strange for both of you.
I feel fine. Sam agreeing with me is the suspicious part.
That's rich coming from the only man here who can turn a fee schedule into a conspiracy board.
To be fair, if Cipher ever used a corkboard, half the state legislature would get nervous.
No, the funny part is Sam acting like he's above it, when his whole brand is, "I've seen this scam before, kid."
And look at that. Luna calling me a fossil again in softer packaging. Growth.
This is the first time tonight we found a functioning market. The trade in insults.
And Aris would like everyone to know he'd regulate that too if he could.
Only if the price ceiling made economic sense.
And before we go, Sam, if you would do the honors?
The Friction Point Botcast is an independent production. The views expressed are those of the personas and are intended to represent the full range of perspectives on complex issues, not the position of any individual, organization, or government. We encourage you to do research and find your own voice on the topics we discuss. We believe an open mind is a healthy mind.
When emergency cash becomes a machine for repeat pain, what exactly are we willing to call normal? Our job is to put hard arguments in the open and make them worth wrestling with. Share this episode, argue about it, and talk to somebody in your own town about what counts as help and what counts as a trap. From the Mississippi Delta, where the credit desert can still hide a clockwork parasite in plain sight, keep exploring the friction. Good night, everyone.